Hi, today we're going to talk about Hammurabi's law code when we look at ancient Mesopotamia. Now at this point what happens is Sargon I is no longer in power and the Akkadian Empire starts to diminish. And because this empire begins to reduce in its size, what we start to notice is all the different individual city-states look to gain their independence back once again. Now remember, each city-state is essentially its own state, its own government, it's its own judicial system. You have people who belong to each city-state that want to make their own decisions on their own ways of life, their own religion, monetary system, roles of women and children, what jobs are men going to do. And when these empires that are basically forcing these city-states under one rule, when that empire is no longer, you have a lot of different city-states that are trying to gain for their independence back. Well, what we can see now is a group of Amorites, these people who originated from Southwest Asia, are moving into Mesopotamia, into the southern portion of it, developed a city-state called Babylon. And in Babylon you have one person by the name of Hammurabi who's going to be the next leader who comes to the forefront. Now Hammurabi not only is going to conquer both northern and southern Mesopotamia, but what he's going to do is add a lot of new features to this area. For example, we look at irrigation. So what Hammurabi is going to do is make sure that the different canal systems are working properly, that the levees aren't damaged, that they're working for the different farmers, that the farmlands have ways to irrigate their crops properly. He's going to establish a minimum and maximum wage system. Or we even look at today, we have in the United States a minimum wage. This is something that can be predated all the way back to Hammurabi. He's also going to set a maximum wage limit so that people could not take advantage of business owners. He's going to come up with language reforms. Okay, the reason here, remember, we have a variety of different city-states that are all going to have their own independence, and language is going to be a barrier. Hammurabi wants everyone to come into more of this Semitic language, and you make everyone a little more universal because it will make communication a lot easier. Now, what makes Hammurabi really special and what he's really known for are his law codes. What Hammurabi does is takes the different law codes, the best law codes from each of the city-states, and develops his own law system. These laws were based off of a principle called eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. There's 282 of these laws. Each one, what we could say is that sometimes the punishment was a little bit harsher than the crime committed. But it was Hammurabi who believed that it was his job to restore order, and that having punishments that fit the crime would make for a more civilized empire. The other thing that he's going to do is appoint royal judges. And part of this is that every case that would come to the court system, the accused would be innocent until proven guilty. This is, again, is a system that we still use in our current judicial system. So it's not as if you have to prove your innocence. It works the opposite way around. So we still get this, again, from Hammurabi's law code. Now as we look at this map here for a minute, you can see that in the southern portion of Babylon, in this dark shaded area, this is the region of Babylon. Now we know a lot of this information because back in the early 1900s there were some French explorers down here near the city of Ur. And as you have the Tigris and Euphrates coming into this Persian Gulf, remember, when you have a river source entering into a larger body of water, you call that the mouth. And then up here in the Zagros Mountains, where the snow-topped mountains in the wintertime and the springtime would begin to melt, you would start to see the Tigris and Euphrates River flooding. That's called the source. Now, down here in the southern region of Mesopotamia, these archaeologists discovered this stone temple. And this 8-foot stone temple they found was actually King Hammurabi and the sun god Shawash. And we get to see all 282 law codes on display for everyone to see. Here's the top part of the actual stone tablet itself. If you were an archaeologist, you have to look and try to identify who is who. On the right, that is actually the sun god Shawash. You can see that he is displaying power. He's on a throne, but he's basically handing over the codes to Hammurabi, this symbolism of authority, and Hammurabi is receiving these codes. He is swearing to protect the people who basically cannot protect themselves. Okay, this slide here basically shows you a little condensed version. This is actually at the Louvre Museum in France. You can go and see it today. It was restored pretty wonderfully, but this tablet again it's kind of like our Constitution, where we understand our rights as U.S. citizens, that we know basically what our rights and expectations are. In Babylon, this method was the same thing. This was to identify exactly what their rights were, what their punishments were if they did break some of their laws, so that everyone in society knew exactly what the expectations were. Again, so this just gives you a little bit of a rundown about King Hammurabi of Babylon, considered one of the greatest emperors in Babylon, the second most famous, maybe after Sargon, because Sargon was one of the first emperors in Mesopotamia, but Hammurabi, if not an equal first, but a very close second. And from here, some of Hammurabi's laws and some of his basic principles are still standing basically almost 4,000 years later.